So this audio is brought to you by John Bumpus in the Nutritional Balancing Friends Facebook group. Please remember that none of the products, claims, or programs from this call have been evaluated by any government health body. The content and information found within this audio from John Bumpus, attendance of this group call, and in our affiliated Nutritional Balancing Facebook group is for informational purposes only. The content is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as treatment cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be construed as such because that would be illegal. Always work with a qualified health professional before making any changes to your diet, supplement use, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. Please understand that you assume all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information. Thank you. So we got the call on. I'm just going to make sure that I got everyone in the group. You guys want to talk about your experience with sauna therapy? Maybe, Carissa, you said you had some healing reactions and maybe some symptoms that prevented you from having long sauna sessions?
Yes. I'm very, very sensitive to the sauna. My husband made us a 3-light sauna, and it's great, but yeah, I have healing reactions afterwards, usually a couple hours after. I have terrible anxiety, and I don't know, I can't really do anything. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but maybe that's because it's actually working well. I don't know. I'm here more to learn. I don't know a lot about it, but we've tried off and on for the last couple of years to do it. But
Okay.
What type of sauna are you using?
It's infrared. I mean, it's 3 infrared lights that he built into like a piece of wood that we hang from the ceiling over a bed, and so we just kind of lay down, and it probably from my chest and abdomen. That's what it shines on us. Does that answer? I'd say about
18 inches.
Oh, 18 inches.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's the standard thing that we do on the program, so I can understand, some of what's going on. I am wondering about, are you doing just the lamps in general, or are you doing the enclosed kind of sauna?
No, not enclosed, just lamps.
Okay. So have you tried using just a regular one infrared lamp?
Yes. Like I've had a couple healing reactions in my head, like sinus problems, and so I've used it to shine at my head. And there was one time we set something up so it just shined on my belly during a coffee enema. And yeah, the one light is very nice. But
Okay.
I'm nervous about going too long with anything.
Yeah, well, the one light is pretty safe. I mean, in general, the lights are safe.
Mhm.
But if you can do just the single infrared lamp therapy, that is a good start. And I would work your way up. I wouldn't try and jump in. Like, if you can only do 3 minutes, you might get some benefit. But, I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like really worth trying to sauna. You're not really building up a sweat in that time, I don't think.
Right.
So, sorry?
No, you're right. I never sweat for some reason.
Yeah.
But I guess that's because my detox pathways aren't open. But I can definitely tell a difference. Like when I was doing 2 minutes and then I accidentally did 4 minutes one day, I had a healing reaction. It's so strange.
Okay. Yeah, so in the call that we're doing now, I will talk about some different things on the sauna because I think it's just kind of like a safe kind of way of talking about it and more people can hear about it. And I think we'll talk a little bit about healing stuff that goes on with the sauna and obviously the different types of saunas and things like that. And then maybe we can do some conversation on what's going on for us individually so that we can all kind of get something out of the call, because some people haven't even used an infrared lamp yet and they might not know what that is. So I'm just going to start with some definitions. And so basically infrared is It is an electromagnetic radiation. So when people say, oh, is it low EMF? That is not really a good question, because every electromagnetic device radiates something. That's how it works. And infrared is a radiation of frequencies, which we call light, you know. So the infrared itself is not usually, at least, visible to the eye unless you have like a laser in a quantum experiment. What we do see when we use the infrared lamps is actually more than just like the red frequency. Infrared sounds like it's only red, but it actually includes red, orange, yellow, and green. So if those that are interested in color therapy, it's really good for any imbalance that is too much on the other side of the spectrum, which is like turquoise, blue, or violet. So there's basically 3 different types of saunas. There's the traditional one, which you've probably seen at the Hilton or something, some spa, which is where you have heat that's generated from rocks, a wood stove, or I mean sometimes they're gas powered. And what it does is it basically heats the air, and that heats the body, and it's very slow, and it takes, you know, like upwards of an hour just to kind of get the temperature up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. For those that are in centigrade, that's like 65 to 93. So it's not boiling. You're not literally gonna boil, but it's hot. Those are the most common saunas, and they were the traditional ones used by Aboriginals, by the Finnish, all that kind of stuff. Now, as technology went forward, we kind of have some other saunas now. We have the electric ones, which there's the far infrared, and the far infrared sauna is usually electric ceramic plates. And what these do is they heat up and generate a radiant heat that's similar to the traditional one, but it's more direct, and it heats us up at our tissues and doesn't so much heat up the atmosphere around it. They do emit some near infrared rays, but they are pretty much just the sensation of heat that you'll feel, because infrared is invisible itself. Usually they're really costly. We don't generally recommend them on the program, but there are some people I know that have a far infrared sauna, and they put some near infrared lights in there, and they say that's pretty great. So I don't want to bash them, they're just more expensive. The infrared sauna that we're going to be talking about in the group, for those that don't really know, is the near infrared lamps. And we will refer to that as like the infrared sauna or the infrared lamp therapy. These are actually red lamps. You can buy bulbs that aren't red. We use the red one because it has the color therapy and helps balance the energetic body. The red color itself feeds the liver, and this kind of sauna heats up through the radiant heat similar to the far infrared, where it heats up the tissues and the cells by proxy. It also contains far infrared spectrum, near infrared spectrum, and a mid infrared. So it's kind of like a full spectrum infrared lamp, really. It doesn't contain as much near as, it doesn't contain some of the infrared that some of the far infrareds carry, because they have more refined technology to only give far rays. So it's more rounded, but some of the fars do have more far infrared. The saunas that we use in this group and in the programs are more efficient cost-wise when it comes down to your electrical bill at the end of the day. And we think this is more economical, it's safer, and it's more efficient. So that's what we will be talking about in this call. For those that haven't listened to the other healing reaction call that we did, healing reactions are desirable on the program. We kind of aim for them. Not everyone knows what a healing reaction is in the mainstream, and oftentimes they'll think of them as disease reactions, or you've done something to poison yourself, or you've injured yourself, or the program's not working, one thing or the other. They can be very frightening when you go through them. You can get things like increased heart rate, anxiety, constipation, fatigue, depression, a whole suite of different things. Sauna therapy really gets these going, uh, especially if you have only been on, say, a diet program and a supplement program, and then you add them in. So they really do initiate healing reactions from what I so they do help with flare-ups of chronic infections. And a healing reaction generally can bring up an old infection, which you might get like ear pain or thrush, or your body might rash out, things like that. This is usually due to old tissues that haven't really regenerated. Once those start to break down through the infrared healing rays, I guess we could call them, new cells start to regenerate, and more robust cells, the ones that didn't die from a little bit of light shining on them, they replicate and they can cause pain and things like that. See if I missed anything. Other things of healing reactions, you can get like numbness in your extremities, so your arms can go numb, and that's very scary. I've gone through that one myself. We've had a couple clients on the group call, not on the group call, on the actual group page, that have also talked about this one. So that's kind of the basic kind of thing as a healing reaction. Once you figure out what a healing reaction is and what it isn't, which we did talk about, and I supplemented a preface even in the past, which you can find in the group, you can really start to choose whether or not you're going to cut down supplements, cut down your program of some way. And if you are going through one, you should always talk to your practitioner. So that's just kind of what a healing reaction is.
I feel like I'm a healing reaction expert. I have so many. That numbness thing. I have that too, like neuropathy. I get it. I have all these terrible things that happen, but I guess it's just because I need to. Do you think it's because I need to open up my methylation pathways or my detox pathways? I mean, and is there a way to do that any faster?
Correct.
I don't know if you heard Aaron laugh and say don't.
Yeah, sorry. You don't want.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I can attest that I'm the same kind of person that likes to go 100% all the time. So like taking all the supplements, doing all the detox protocols, doing like everything and more sometimes, and I'll be like 100% in a healing reaction for like so long that I almost forget like what normal is. So I've kind of been cutting down recently, but yeah, the healing reactions are pretty ridiculous. But for me, it mainly manifests in like panic, anxiety, and depression. I have a lot of, according to my test, some copper imbalances and stuff. So a lot of hidden copper that's getting pushed out.
That's awesome. Yeah. Me
So
too.
as far as detoxification with the infrared, you mentioned that you didn't really sweat very often. I do think that, and I've experienced it myself, I've had other people say it and they didn't really, went in one ear out the other, and then they go, oh my god, I'm sweating now, right? So the way it works is it takes a couple of months to actually build up the ability to sweat. In our modern civilization, we don't really sweat unless you're like an athlete, or unless you are in Canada and you're in a coat and all that, you're waiting in line at the coffee shop. So so really, with the infrared lamp, it may take 3 months kind of thing before you actually start to build up a sweat. You can sweat with just an infrared lamp, and I can do that, especially with being in Australia now. I sweat even without it, but just the infrared lamp, depending on how warm it is in your house or how often you use it. Because in Canada, when I was there, I remember the first time I had a sweat drop run down my side, and I was, only using one lamp. And to me, that was big because it was the first sign as your skin starting to open up. Welcome, Amy. Can you hear us?
Can. Sorry I'm late to the call.
No problem. Welcome. We're just talking about trying to increase detoxification and why it's not always a great idea to do that. And maybe I was just speaking now about how not everyone sweats immediately in a sauna or with infrared lamp therapy, and that it takes a couple of months to do so.
Yeah, I think in Dr. Wilson's book he says that slow oxidizers and people that don't have good levels of excreting of the toxins and the heavy metals, they have a harder time to start off with slower. Fortunately, I started sweating right away.
Right on. Lucky you. I didn't sweat for a while.
Yeah, my first HTMA, I was a fast oxidizer and had good levels of all my heavy metals, so my pathways are open, so that was good.
Yeah, right on. So you just gotta. So most of us need to decongest even our skin when we talk about liver congestion and things like that. We have skin congestion because our skin is a detox organ, and oftentimes it's just not used to sweating or even letting toxins come out of it.
Totally.
When that happens, you get a backed up lymphatic system, and that's no fun because it screws up your hormones, and usually that's downstream from a liver congestion. So there's a lot of people on the program that are in that situation, but yeah, it's good to get sweat going.
And I actually don't really sweat from my armpits, and I have really congested armpits and puffy armpits and lymphatic there, so I actually don't sweat much from there, but sweat other places, which is kind of weird. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way too. I didn't sweat for the longest time, like when I first started. But I found that, like you're saying, that cleaning the skin is like essential. And we just get so much plaque and so much like just gnarly stuff that gets stuck in the skin that we can't sweat properly. So I found that like dry skin brushing before the sauna helped a lot. Also, like getting out in the sun during the morning, like in the AM hours, getting the UVA light on your skin, that kind of helps a little bit to get the sweat going. Also, like drinking like some like heating herbal teas, like ginger tea, when you're in the sauna can help a lot. Yeah, that's some of the stuff that I've kind of figured out along the way. This is also not NB friendly, but there's this guy named Robert Kassar on YouTube.
It was entering my mind as you were speaking.
Yeah, I did a couple rounds of that where it's like he has like this recipe of like it's like a vodka skin brush, and like you pretty much mix up like vodka and like it's like triple distilled vodka with like MSM powder, which is like a sulfur based powder, like silica and a couple other stuff, and you pretty much scrub your skin with that, and you can use like a gua sha. And really all this is doing is just getting the lymphatic system moving and pretty much open up the pores of the skin. So that's more of an extreme way of doing it, but the dry skin brushing definitely is a good way to start.
Yeah, Robert Kassar, he's not necessarily nutritional balancing friendly, only in the sense that if you consider nutritional balancing only as Wilson's program, which it's not, then it's not friendly. But if you are open to enhancing detoxification and pushing yourself pretty much to reach optimal, Robert Kassar's got a lot of good information. I think he's got a lot of biased information, but
yeah,
he's really open about parasites and things like that, which most people don't really talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about the different kind of things with infrared, just because we're kind of aiming on that right now. So there's basically, I mentioned in the beginning how infrared has different frequencies or bands of colors, right? It's got red, orange, yellow, and green. These colors pretty much are how infrared was first discovered. So I don't know if anyone knows about like Newton and things like that. And he would take light through a prism, and he could tell that there was 7 colors in the sun. And there was pretty much a guy, I forget his name, I think it was Herschel. And what he did was he basically measured the temperature of those, and he found the closer you get to that red spectrum, you start to get heat, Once you get off that red spectrum into the off the chart kind of area, it's actually the hottest. So pretty much you don't need to see the light to benefit from the sauna. That's really what I'm trying to hammer home here. The sauna basically works through a lot of different ways. If you're interested in Gerald Pollack's work, you'd know that infrared lamps can generate exclusion zone water in the cell, which is called easy water. My research basically comes to the conclusion that slow oxidizers, which generally have a high calcium tissue level, can benefit a lot by including infrared lamps just on the basis of the easy water. I don't want to talk about the cell membrane. That's a different topic. But so because these provide light and colors in at least half of the spectrum that's visible to the human eye, you can pretty much use infrared lamps for anything that ends with an osis, if I could just say that. So whether it's osteoporosis or any other Latin word that ends in osis, you can use the infrared lamp for. You wouldn't want to use it for things like, say your body's generating a fever. It's not a good idea at that time to use an infrared sauna because it's counterintuitive to the body's wisdom, which it's already producing heat. If you give it heat, and now it just, to me, it goes against the nature of the human body, of what it's trying to do already. When you have like a weak immune system, you have chronic infections, and you have a slow metabolism, usually your basal temperature is quite low, and that's where we use infrared saunas to raise that back up, and it will help with infections and things like that. I did mention how the red frequency pretty much is food for the liver. It might sound quacky, and I guess I'm a duck, but according to Dinsal Gadalati, who is a really renowned color researcher, he basically said the liver needs red, the spleen needs violet. So anyone that says avoid all blue light has got half the story. So when you are in the sauna, you do generate different proteins at the cellular level. One of them is the heat shock proteins. They help eliminate weak cells and prevent them from multiplying. So you don't want to become, like, cells make up tissues, tissues make up proteins, like muscle and things like that. When tissues are in conglomerates, they make up organs. So if you have a weak cells, you have weak organs, you have a weak organism. So you generally want to have really robust cells, is the basic kind of idea. Basically, the sauna itself shunts blood to the surface and can dilate blood vessels, which is good for delivering nutrients to certain areas of the body. So you might have read at one point or seen somewhere that infrared saunas are good for blood sugar imbalances, which might be the calcium magnesium ratio in nutritional balancing, but not always. It does start sweating. It shuts down your normal heat production, which is why we don't want to use it when we have a fever that our body's already doing, because you want to support the body, not stop the body from supporting itself. And it can actually clean up, well, I guess it would be called decoupling water from toxins. It's like this dipole movement thing. It's kind of like some of that Gerald Pollack stuff again. It does increase enzyme activity because when heat goes, things happen a lot more when there's enzymes. And we talked about decongesting organs. That's basically a lot of the different things that the infrared sauna does, like mechanically or physiology, one or the other. But the most important one, in my opinion, I banged on about this in the GI disturbances call, is that it helps shunt, I guess you could say, the sympathetic nervous system, and it helps promote the parasympathetic nervous system. And like when Aaron was saying at the beginning of the call, when you are stressed out about your diet, stressed out about doing something right, or following a complete regimen, you are in a sympathetic state, and that is not conducive to detoxification. So the infrared lamp does all of these things at the same time, which is really cool. So just kind of wanted to touch on that. For those that don't really know what the protocol is for a sauna, some of the best times to do it is in the morning or right before you go to bed. And in the morning, it's really good. I like to do it at nighttime personally before I go to bed. But start your day or to end your day, or if you want to do both, that's up to you. It depends how much time you got to kind of do it. If you follow every one of Wilson's recommendations, like the genital bath and implants and enemas and stuff, you might start to realize that you're running out of time at the end of the day. So to me, the most important of all is the sauna. That's just me. Maybe Amy has something to say about that. Do you?
Do I have something to say about it?
Yeah, I personally think the sauna is the most important, but do you have any input on that?
Oh yeah, I think even if you can just do it a little. I mean, I know a lot of my clients can only tolerate it for just a couple of minutes at a time, but I really encourage them. I think it's so important. It does so many things other than just detoxing the skin. I mean, I think you've touched on a lot of them.
I probably forgot some, but
Getting out of sympathetic dominance. It helps digestion, helps increase your basal body temperature. I mean, for me, that was huge because for years I was battling parasites and doing parasite cleanses and over and over. I mean, they just kept coming back. And the one thing that's really helped me with underlying infections and parasitic infections has been the sauna, just because they can't survive when your temperature of your body is consistently where it needs to be. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that both of you are really on point with using the using the infrared lamp to help with microorganisms. So you can have hidden infections, whether it be, you can have skin parasites. Nobody likes to talk about them. You can have intestinal parasites. You can have candida that likes to hide in warm, moist areas like joints. And I found that they like to hide right in the back of the skull, just under the skull where it connects to the neck, and in the joints in the toes and feet, because most people usually are wearing socks all the time. They have them in shoes, and there's a lack of movement. It gets really warm and clammy, and that promotes bacterial growth. And they like it warm, but they don't like it too warm. So typically the normal body temperature is high enough to actually put some of these organisms in an environment where they don't want to be anymore. And you don't want to kill them. You really want to shift the environment. Daniel probably knows about this from Dr. Kassar's work. There's other ones, but Dr. Kassar really talks about it, where you change the environment so that they want to leave on their own, and you don't want to kill them or attack them, because when they respond to your attacks, it's a war mentality, and it's not a good way to approach healing. The second one is if you have parasites, some people have them in their stomachs or intestines and things like that, and they can get big. You don't want those guys to be mad, because they will make you feel unwell. And just the same when you disintegrate them, if you take diatomaceous earth, or if you take even some wormwood tinctures and things like that, which Amy might have used, which she was on parasite cleanses, if you dissolve those parasites, they actually hoard in them heavy metals. So when you break these down inside of your body and they don't leave your body as a whole, what happens is now your body has another biochemical stress of, what do I do with this toxin load that comes in? So the infrared lamp's very helpful to create an environment that these guys don't want to live. So it's not necessarily you're killing them, it's just not supporting their lifestyle anymore, if you could say, and they want to leave on their own, which is better out than in that kind of perspective.
Exactly. And we so often think of parasites as just being multicellular organisms, but most of our parasites are single cellular, viruses, bacteria, amoeba, bacteria, candida, and when the basal body temperature is high enough, they can't replicate. So
Hmm.
it helps with that too. I've had people that have like their surgeons have recommended back surgery right away. They did the sauna and it helped the inflammation so bad that they didn't even need, or so well that they didn't need the back surgery anymore. I've had lots of people shrink tumors. I just can't go on and on. I could go on and on about the benefits of sauna therapy.
Yeah, they use them. The infrared lamps that we recommend are usually end up even in different dermatology clinics. So when people have very bad, whether even burns, which it's kind of seems counterintuitive, but you don't use it on the burn, you use it on scar tissue, and whether it's from acne or anything like that, and it really helps the body regenerate. Um, and it's kind of an area where I think the future is going to be, at least, and where it's going to go is incorporating more light therapies.
Hmm.
That's my own opinion, but that's what I think.
The near infrared spectrum, this like blew my mind when I first read it, but it's like the sun is to plants for photosynthesis. The near infrared is to our cells. It helps it actually, the light produces ATP within the animal cells, just like photosynthesis does. I mean, that just like totally blew my mind when I first read that. Just thought it was such an amazing way to heal cellularly.
It's fascinating, really. I like to think of the sun. Well, I come from a little bit of the yoga kind of background where we talk about like the sun being the guru bead, right? And if you kind of think of the infrared lamp as kind of being like a guru in a box where you can plug it in and you get enlightened by this warming and healing energy, which is usually what people call a guru, right? They emanate those things. So I think if you can't always access sunlight, accessing the infrared lamp, especially if you're working a 9 to 5 or something like that, where you just don't get that warm energy, to me that the infrared lamp is probably the best thing you can do.
I just think it's so amazing that I had insomnia for 35 years, and when I started using the infrared light, my insomnia went away. So I think it's amazing that like I can do it in the morning and it can give me energy, and then I can do it at night and it can relax me. I just think it's it's just so amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really cool because it kind of forces the body to even enter a different sympathetic or autonomic state, right? Personally, I can get worked up, and when I use infrared lamp at nighttime, that really helps me sleep because I not that I have insomnia, and I have had it before because only as a side symptom because I had a chronic spinal injury that I just couldn't lay down for a long time. So I do infrared. And you mentioned it even in the past, how just a couple of minutes ago about clients of yours that have used it to prevent surgeries and things like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with degenerating the weak cells and regenerating them at the same time because it's got that warming frequency that I think even Wilson says that it resonates at the cellular level, right? Because it's like that life-giving property that even plants need to promote their structure and function. And just by us being more complex organisms, we still have that basic need for that spectrum to support and promote our function, and structure.
I have a question. Where would we get this light, this particular spectrum of light from if it weren't from that? Is it a piece of the sun spectrum?
Yeah, the infrared lamp is basically, like I've mentioned in the past, in the beginning, about how infrared is a piece of the electromagnetic spectrum. And one area you get it is in the sun, but the other one where traditionally you would find it is with fires that we used to do. And we kind of evolved, if you believe in evolution, with over time, right? We've always used fire to cook, which was predominantly at nighttime, or if you needed to cook in the morning, you would still use a fire. So in the midday, it's generally warmer, so you would already have access to that spectrum there. The infrared itself is actually the sensation of heat. So if I could like simplify it.
Thank you.
So yeah, these spectrums are very important. The other ways you would get it is at nighttime when the Earth is warmed up from the sun throughout the day. If you touch the ground at nighttime, or even if you eat foods that grow in the Earth, it's kind of an esoteric concept, but they do also contain infrared energies. I don't know if you've ever harvested a root vegetable and it being warmer than the environment above the ground. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the cautions to use when you're infrareding, just so we can have a well-rounded kind of call. Always be careful when you use a lamp because it can be hot. I've bashed my elbow off it. It doesn't feel good, you know.
I burnt the curtain in my house.
Yeah, Erin's burnt the cupboard in her house.
Curtain.
Oh, you melted the curtain, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So be careful of your surroundings when you're using the lamp. It does get warm, and the bulb itself does get hot, even if the air might not be hot around it. It generally is, but when you're using just the lamps, move it around in different spots. This helps. If you've ever used the infrared lamp, it almost works like it pulls blood to it. That's how it feels like, at least. So when you rotate, which Wilson recommends to do as well, it helps draw blood to different areas. So you can do like aim it at your liver, and then you can go on the back and aim it at your kidneys, and it pulls blood around your body, which is really good because sometimes you can have circulation issues, which sauna is really good for, but you can have microcirculation issues where you might not have circulation issues per se, but you might, like, maybe your knees get cold or something like that, which is common for me, for example. My body's warm. You'd think I was a fast oxidizer most of the time, but sometimes my body throughout its whole thing isn't always the same temperature. So those are like microcirculation kind of things. So sauna is really good with things like that. When you pull them around and things like that, you don't want to leave it at your head too long. First, you become hot-headed, which is a good expression. The second thing is you don't really want to keep your brain above body temperature for too long. Some people say to do it, some people don't. For safe kind of recommendations, try not to aim it at your face. It's a good idea to close your eyes if you do need to use it for like an ear infection or something like that. Any infection use, it's better to do shorter term sauna sessions or infrared lamp sessions than it is to do long term kind of uses. So instead of going in it for, say you're at an hour and you can go in there, you might want to do shorter sessions. It can be 10-15 minutes multiple times. So I've done that, especially infrared, just this single lamp for ear infections that come up through healing reactions. Children under 5, probably not a good idea for them to go in there. I mean, there are some parents that would do that, and to me that's up to you what you think it is, but as a general rule, not a good idea. Not that it'll hurt them or anything, you just don't know if the kid touches it or stuff. If you're pregnant, aiming the light at your stomach isn't a good idea because the infrared lamps can go into tissues about 3 to 4 inches. So you don't, a baby getting those lights, we don't really know what that's going to do. Probably not a good idea. In the past, has a baby been exposed to a fire while a mother was cooking? Probably, but it's safer to say, as a general recommendation, not to do that. Psychedelic drug use, if you've taken them, if you do take them, You can some people talk about like LSD flashbacks, things like that, which is a cool understanding when you know about nutritional balancing, when your body holds things in layers and holds toxins in layers and chemicals in layers and makes compensations. When you're in the sauna, you might get a time when you might get flashbacks, so just keep that in mind. I've never had that because I had my fair share of psychedelic use. If you are really sick and you have like high blood pressure, which isn't really sick, but if you have like diabetes or neuropathies and things like that, it's usually a good idea for someone else to know that you're in the sauna. Because when you're not in the sauna and they don't know and something happens, say you fall over, or if you're dependent on a wheelchair or something, then you kind of, it's just best for someone to know that you're in there. If you need a more mild experience while you're inside an enclosed sauna, you can open the door or open up the sheet. However, some people have it in their closet. I have clients that do that. So some people have it in the shower. You can open the door. Like you don't always have to be enclosed. The major difference is that the ambient temperature is not as hot. It's more comfortable for people. Hydration is really important. I like to think to always have at least 4 to 8 ounces before you go in, and then go in the sauna. I don't really recommend bringing water into the sauna because if you splash it on the bulb, then it's going to blow up, and shrapnel that's hot isn't a good idea. A lot of those homemade ones don't always include the safety thing, so I don't like to recommend to bring water into the sauna. After you sauna, it is some people don't generally agree. Some people think you don't need to hydrate after. I recommend as basic kind of rule to rehydrate after. So I know a lot of people might forget to drink water, or if you do in the morning and you've only had a glass of water, you might sweat out that glass of water during that time. And including salt in there if you can. It's a good time to take your kelp after the sauna. Before the sauna, in my opinion, it's a good idea to take your supplements because, like I talked about, how the lamp pulls the blood around and that delivers nutrients to organs, to cells, to the body. So it's a good idea to do that, in my opinion. I think I've covered a good amount of stuff. That's a good question, person right beside me. Well, to me, I think it's always best if you're going to do them both at the same time. Like I said, stay hydrated. I don't think you need to do them both at the same time. I mean, I guess you can have coffee in all your orifices at the same time while you're in front of the lamp, which Wilson may recommend one day. But to me, I don't think it's necessary to do them all at the same time. I think even if you just do enema one day, or do enemas in the morning, coffee, enemas in the morning, do the sauna at nighttime or something like that, I don't think you have to kind of get everything in there at the same time. Even reading or listening to some podcasts or something like that may help, but for some people it could be a stressor. And really what you want to do is relax while you're in the sauna. And obviously you want to stay hydrated. So I think you have a good question, Aaron. I think as long as you're hydrated, you'll be okay, and as long as you rehydrate, you'll be fine. Do you have any thoughts on that, Amy? I know you're a practitioner, so.
Yeah, I do all of my stuff at the same time or shortly thereafter just to save time, and my clients do it too, and we haven't had any problems. But my clients stay pretty hydrated. I mean, they do 3 liters or 4 liters of water a day, and I don't know. I've done done my coffee enemas and then done the lamps over me, where I'm laying down underneath them. I've done my coffee enema and then done the sauna directly before or after. And I think Dr. Wilson kind of changes, I think his current recommendation right now is single light therapy during an enema. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think he's saying do the sauna first and then the coffee enema to sweep up any of the toxins that were released during the sauna. I think that's his
Okay.
current recommendation. I could have that backwards though, but
Well, that sounds accurate to me. I mean, like it just makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it says.
yeah, and like John said, that could change. I mean, he changes
Yeah.
a lot. So, but yeah, I mean, we haven't had anybody have problems with it, and I'm friends with a lot of practitioners, and I mean, sometimes like if people are dehydrated, they'll be like, I'm, retaining my enema. I'm not, like sometimes they'll retain some of the water from it, but we
The
have
whole thing.
not like I mean, they'll still do some, but we'll just say, just do another enema, and flush it out, and then it usually comes out after that. But yeah, and I think in Dr. Wilson's coffee enema article, he says that that's even okay, like if you retain some of the water from it. So
Yeah, I just think the enema part is a whole other discussion. But I personally, I think it's, like I said, probably best not to do them at the same time. That's just what I think. But I do know people strapped for time may do that. That's why I joked about having it in every orifice, right? Doing the coffee hold, and they make the coffee that they drink each day at the same time they made their coffee animal. Like they try and get everything done within 2 hours or something, and then they have the rest of the day. I think it's individual at the end of the day, really.
yeah, and I'm pretty busy. I have a part-time job and I run 2 businesses, so I do. I try to do an hour of spa in the morning and then an hour of spa in the evening, so I can get all my stuff done. But yeah, I think it's completely individual. I've done them separate together, but just to answer the question from my standpoint, I haven't had any clients have an issue with it unless they're sensitive to the sauna, which some of them are.
Okay, cool. Maybe anyone else has an idea? Did I miss something? Or I think I covered a lot of stuff, but with every one of these topics, there's so much. You can really talk for more than an hour and a half, 2 hours on.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit like all the elements to it. Yeah, just going off what Amy was saying a little bit. From what I've kind of started doing is like shining one singular red light bulb on my liver while I'm doing a coffee enema, and I find that's like really good, at least for me. And then I'll do like an actual sauna session like later at night before I go to sleep, because it definitely helps me wind down and activate that parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I think the enemas themselves can be stimulating, and I think the lamp therapy really counteracts that. What I do think the future of coffee enemas would be, if I could just, talk about that, I think in the future they'll have the infrared stovetop, which maybe some of you guys even have, cooking the water with the infrared and boiling the coffee in that so that you can have color charged water.
Oh, wow.
So you can have easy water that is a coffee, that goes into your bump. I think that it was probably maybe a little quack, like I said, a little bit like that sometimes, but there is some articles on color charged water, and they measure it through something called sparkle units, which sounds even worse. Aaron's giggling at me, but, they do. And I think maybe if you could like upgrade it, the bulletproof thing.
I did see the commercial. It's like a unicorn factory making sparkle units. So
Yeah.
I actually charge after I make my coffee enema. I actually sit it in front of an infrared light for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I do the same.
So you're doing it intuitively already, you see?
Yeah.
I'm
I was actually doing it like when I first got my infrared light. I was just like, oh, like this is great. I'm gonna put it. And then Dr. Wilson actually wrote it into his article that he recommended doing that. I mean, I didn't tell him to do it, but obviously, just intuitively, it's funny.
I like I said, I think because since Gerald Pollack did the work on easy water with the infrared, it was bound to come up, whether he did it or anyone else did. I think it's just bound to come up. Another cool thing you can do with the infrared lamp is charge your drinks, like you've said, in a clear vessel, or if you don't have access to it and you're outside or something like that, you can put your water, like spring water, in the sunlight, and that is another way to do things. If you drink teas, which I know Wilson doesn't really recommend because herbs, But as a herbalist, we did like it's traditionally done as you do like a tea that was brewed with the sun, right? So you, like I back in the day used to do hibiscus ones, for example. And what you do is you put the hibiscus, for example, into water in a jar or something like that, and then you put it in the sun. You can do it on your you're like at your window or something, but I usually just put it in the sun, and then it would brew the tea, and then I'd strain it off. And I think it's got the same concept as that easy water kind of thing, where it was brewed naturally, not at a very high temperature and things like that.
Yeah, there's this shop called Omaka, and they have like these Miron water bottles that are glass. So you can actually like fill up your water bottle and then like place it outside. And I think it's like 40 ounces, and you're pretty much good for like you have easy water for that amount of period of time.
Yeah, that's what I want to get, the Myron vessel to actually hold the water. I don't know. We have the little ones because when we get like reishi extract and things like that from our friends at Super Feast, then they do Myron glass for their herbs. And what we end up doing is we reuse the vessels for like, oregano and for garlic and things like that we end up using for our food. In the future, I'd like to get the water vessel that I can actually hold my everyday water in.
Well, we've got that many of them now. We could probably make a whole one.
It's too big.
The Omaka, the website's called Omaka Organics. I think it's like $20, and you get your water vessel. That's all Miron glass. It's pretty sweet.
Well, we're in Australia, so the shipping is probably like $40.
That's
so.
true.
$100.
Do you have any experience with like the vortexing waters and all that?
I never actually had like it was a Victor Schauberger's kind of replication of the European vortex, where they take the water and comes through a tube, goes into like this little metal tube that vortex the water. I haven't really played with that myself. Those devices are a couple thousand.
Wow.
I got a flask, Scott.
Aaron's got we got a crystal flask. It's called
crystal. It's glass.
Is it?
Yeah.
Glass
and
is
it
a crystal though.
With symbols.
Yeah, it's just got as far as this one goes, it's a product that is glass, and they say that the glass is programmed with the frequencies of spring water, and I don't know really.
And they have used it and done studies with it and grown better strawberries and things.
Yeah, so whether or not it's not really vortexing, but the water itself is very interesting. I have seen that if you do anything with water, whether or not you even place an intent on the water, if you have a trace mineral solution in the water, it actually holds it better, and the results are better. That was work done by Dr. Yuri Krohn. I talked with him a couple of times on that. So,
yeah. Wasn't it like Dr. Emoto that did the experiment on the emotions, like writing love on the water bottle, on the water vessel, and it like changed the crystallization structure of the water, something like that.
Yeah, no, that's what he talks about, right?
Yeah.
We can do a future call on water.
I guess we could do a call in the future just on water and all these different things that are really cool with water. But like, because I mentioned like the lamp itself is almost like, I call it like the guru in a box, right? Where it is sending like a radiant energy, and it's a healing energy, healing frequencies and things like that. And if you do it on the water, like the teas and things like that, we mentioned that you can charge your enema and all that with the lamp. I think that's a really good aspect that you can do as a side to detoxification in a sauna or just the infrared lamp therapy. But that same kind of ideologies, whatever you want to say, is backed by science, but it's still an ideology. It still can be extrapolated onto the human body, and I think that's where a lot of people, even Wilson says that the rays resonate with our cells and things like that for a number of reasons. We've talked about them in this call. That's kind of the things that I got in mind, like the cell itself, mostly made of water, the human body mostly made out of water. So Yeah, I wouldn't vortex the human though.
Yeah, my dog always, when I'm in the sauna, if she comes in, she's always just hanging right by the sauna, just soaking up that heat. She loves it. It's crazy.
Mine
I
too.
rescue and foster animals, and every single one I've had just loves it. I can't keep them out from underneath it. So I actually have one that I put over a cage that I just have specially for them that they can come in and out when they want. So they go in there and ask for it. It's so funny.
Oh wow, that's cool. And I guess it's good if you're fostering as well, because not all of them. I imagine some of them, but not all of them probably had like that motherly, warming energy to like cuddle with or something like that. Where
The dogs that I foster are aggressive animals. They're unadoptable because they're aggressive, and I mean the light calms them down so much, and yeah, it's amazing.
that's great, and that's the ultimate placebo test, if you ask me, because you can't convince a dog that the infrared lamp, or even a cat, that the infrared lamp's good for them, right? So they kind of, to me, are the ultimate placebo test. Like it just proves, even like what you said, that it's really good for your immune system or your nervous system and helping relax. And you know, Aaron just said don't do it on fish. Yeah, we learned that one.
Hard way.
Did you
Don't-
boil fish?
Yeah, well, the fish wasn't doing well, and we thought infrared.
I thought
Yeah.
John knew better. I didn't.
I was thinking, like, like it's healing, and I was telling her how great it is for, animals and things like that. So she had a fish that wasn't doing too well. And so what she did was she put the lamp and faced it we didn't do this on purpose to those listening, but she aimed the lamp. Yeah, she's not so bad. She
No, I
liked the
felt so
fish.
bad.
We just wanted to, help it. And she aimed the infrared lamp at the fish tank, and it cooked the fish. Like the fish,
Not immediately.
yeah, not right away, but
It was dead the next day.
yeah, died the next day. So
Oh my gosh.
yes, yeah. So good thing that happened on a fish, which we loved. So
We'll put that in the talking section. Don't fry your fish.
Assisted fish in Asia.
Fish in Asia.
teenage. Yeah, so don't, for anyone that's listening, don't use it on your fish. Your cat may like it, your dog may like it.
Mammals.
Yeah, mammals.
Yeah, and the thing with pets is you have to always make sure that you don't like shut them in too. Like they, intuitively need to be able to leave when they get too hot.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll share a photo in the group of when we had a fire the other day, and the cat just chilling right there. And like we're in Australia, it's hot, right? We're
didn't
basically
care.
in a sauna, and the cat just like comes, walks up, gets pretty close, not close enough to end up like a fish, but and he just lays down, relaxes, and then on his own volition, he gets up and moves. It wasn't like we had to like, coerce it away. But yeah, you make a good point, Amy, especially about animals if they're going to do that.
And I've used them on, chickens and reptiles, and I mean you can use them on all manners of animals except for fish.
So we did have a question for the call. It's not something that I'm the most versed in, but maybe we can think of something. Kind of touched on the healing reactions that the sauna can cause. I want to say cause, but
Bring up.
yeah. So Jillian was wondering about. Here's a question. She basically wanted to know how to determine detox symptoms from cautionary increased histamine symptoms in relation to the sauna. So I imagine she goes in the sauna and probably has increased symptoms. Do you have any thoughts? If you don't know what a histamine thing is for everyone, basically it's produced by mast cells, and there's some people that have mast cell activation syndrome, and basically histamine's produced and surrounds. It basically causes blood cells that are around histamine to dilate and increase their permeability, and it basically causes things like watery eyes, constipation, stuffy face. It's probably not the scientific term, but yeah, swelling, I guess. Do you have any thoughts, Amy?
That's an interesting question. I'd have to do some research on it, but it was my understanding that the red light therapy suppresses the cells that release histamine, so it kind of acts as, I don't know, I'm trying to think how, I mean, because mast cells are the first cells that are released in the immune response, so I'm trying to think maybe if you added, and I'm just randomly talking, I don't know.
No, please, because I'm pretty much, I mean, like I said, I'm not a specialist in this. I have an idea, you probably have some ideas, but this isn't medical information anyway. This is just for entertainment.
Because I'm wondering if mast cells would initially be released with the heat, because that's one of their signaling, responses.
Okay.
But I would think that if you continued, if you did, so if you started, and I'm just thinking, I'm not sure if this is true, but if you started the infrared sauna, I would think that initially you might have a mast cell release, but if you continued past that mast cell release, I think it would suppress the cells that release the histamine. Does that make sense? So it might initially signal a mast cell response, but I would think overall, if you pushed through it, and I don't know.
Well, I was kind of thinking something similar. To me, if anything is bacterial or something like that, it's automatically a healing response because that's how alternative medicine works. What I mean by that is if you have an infection, it's your body trying to heal itself. If your immune system is producing cells to kind of find a state of balance, and one of the side effects of an immune response is to increase body temperature, then I think was kind of what you're touching on, where the body heats up, and it could either be like a conditioned response from the immune system, or it could just be a general healing reaction. And if you could go, maybe not do long-term sauna, but just do single infrared on local areas and then work your way up to producing more heat. To me, I think that would be a good place because I don't think, at least long-term, that it's conducive to the body to avoid, like if your core temperature goes up and you have an immune response, then there's more than just that going on, really. There's most likely an infection of some kind.
Yeah, I'd like to add a theory as well. This is, again, just a theory, but from my understanding, I think that histamine is a response to stress. So it's similar to a stress response in the system. So, I mean, just off the bat, I mean, red light is similar to almost exercise, where it's hormesis. So it's a beneficial stressor. So where the body acclimates to the stress. So yeah, maybe that the red light's causing some kind of histamine release due to the fact that it's a beneficial stress. So maybe kind of slowly work your way up to kind of prevent any kind of major histamine release.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also there's a similarity between the function of what the sauna actually does, which it dilates blood vessels, and that's also what histamine does. So it's probably, it's a great question because they technically both do the same thing. And I think Amy's on point, and the idea that it may be a short-term thing and not necessarily a long-term thing.
I was actually talking to a lady about this today because she has multiple chemical sensitivities, which I used to have. I mean, I could walk into a store and I would almost go into an anaphylactic reaction. I would start vomiting, coughing, I'd pass out. And it was because I had such a high parasite load, which fills, when you have parasites, they release IgE, they release all these histamines. Your immune bucket's full, your histamine bucket's full. So if you add any any stressors or histamine or pollen or anything on top of that, it just immediately spills over and you just have these huge reactions. So I would think that it would kind of be the same thing online with what you guys were saying, that if your histamine bucket's full and your parasite load is full, and then you add the stressor, even though it's a good stressor from the sauna, and then you add the heat, you start having die-off, and you start initiating like your immune response. So it starts spilling over immediately, like really quickly. So I think that you guys are, just in my theory and the way I'm thinking, I think it's pretty on point.
Yeah, like none of us really know. We're not going to claim to be special. We know exactly what's going on. But to me, if you have like they call it MCAS, right? Mast cell activation syndrome. If you're there, you're pretty much at the end of the stream as far as, whether it be nutritional imbalances or microbial imbalances or anything like that. You're pretty much, it's not a question of whether or not they're there. It's like they are there, and trying to address those at the same time as working with the overactive immune system. Because if you think about the immune system itself, it has to do with the relationship between my outside body and my inside body, right? And like pollen, that's a food. Some people, raw foodists would, would find pollen, right? That's technically a food, and it could technically nourish you. But if you're at that stress tipping point, you cross the threshold where your immune system's always on edge. I think that's kind of where MCAS kind of comes into play. And I think that's why it's becoming more and more common. I see it all over on Facebook, but whether or not we have a solution or the exact thing that's going on, I think that's a different scenario.
For me, it was mold exposure, and then through the mold exposure weakening my immune system, I had a lot of other parasites because my system was so weakened. So was doing a lot of parasite cleanses and things. I was doing all the wrong things, trying to force it out. But once I did finally start doing the sauna, it helped fix my environment in my body.
The other things that come to mind just on that topic would be about whenever you have like a say toxin, a biotoxin, or endotoxin, whatever you want to call it, you want to try and include a lot of green colors, right? So that's where the sauna can help. But the other thing is, like, you can include green vegetables because the chlorophyll will help neutralize anything like that. Same with sulfur. So to me, it's like you might really want to focus on the liver, even though it seems like it's not direct. It is in the sense that once the liver is clogged, and then the gallbladder backs up, and then the lymphatic system backs up, and the skin's, you know what I mean? It's like downhill. I think if you work on the liver, even though many people probably say work on the gut, which I think is important, I just think it's a blanket statement that doesn't really help anyone. You always gotta work on your gut health. But like I said before, the relationship between the inner and the outer, it could even have a lot to do with like there could be an emotional aspect to it, or even a conditioned response to a thought process that like, every time I experience increased heart rate, my temperature goes up, and I start to feel flu-y or something. I don't know what exact symptoms Jillian's going through, but you may automatically jump to the conclusion that, I'm having this response, but it may not be. And I think differentiating whether or not her symptoms are actually just a healing response is important, because you could think, I have a fever, but your body could be amping up to kill a microbial thing, or address that. Those are just some thoughts that come into my mind on that, because I have personally, I've had chemical sensitivity, and it happened to me when I had a spinal injury. I was going to the hospital all the time, which isn't a good environment. What happened was I had used an antibacterial hand thing, Purell. I put some of that on, and what I did was I picked up a bag of milk. And it sounds crazy, but there's there's blue dyes on the bag of milk, and I had Purell still on my hand. And what it did was it took off the blue dye and it put it onto my hand. And then for the next like year, 2 years, while I was still going through my injury, like healing, I still had like this nasty rash where I got exposed to the blue dye, right? So it would inflame all the time, and I think it was getting worse. But it actually started to get improved the more I worked on my body as a whole instead of just focusing on the one thing. So I think we kind of talked about that topic, whether or not we ruined it or threw her off track and she doesn't know what to do. I don't know. But you got some opinions, Jillian? 10 minutes.
I think you're spot on about the emotional aspect and the, not just concentrating on. I think people think of the digestive system as just like the gut, but kind of have to do it from a top-down perspective. I mean, I had just I keep talking about my personal experience, but
That's important.
yeah, I mean, I was end-stage liver disease. I had cirrhosis, ascites. I had liver tumors. They were talking about resecting half my liver. I definitely had to start with a lot of liver health, and I don't think that I could have done everything that I needed to do if I didn't completely do a 180 on my mindset and the way that I thought about healing. I really had to become grateful for becoming sick, which sounds really counterintuitive, but I had to really thank my body for doing all the things that, even though to us it's, we think of it as disease and illness, but when you really think about it, the body is really trying its hardest to protect us for us putting it through what we've put it through. So I really had to, thank my body for the tumors, for walling off the infections, and thank my liver for, putting down certain parts, and just trying to do the best that it can. Yeah, I mean, because if you're so angry at your illness and your body, I don't think that you can really. I think it's more difficult to heal when you have that mindset.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I've come from it too, where I've been pretty much fed up with the symptoms that I had, but I couldn't improve them, and I went to the doctors and they couldn't improve them. And really what it came to me is, in yoga we talk about the mountain pose, right, which is pretty much standing on your own 2 feet, right? And that one really resonated with me, of where I could try and find all these things external to try and help me. I did nutritional balancing, I did other stuff, because I really, what mattered to me wasn't sticking to a program, it was improving my health. And for me, I had to change who I was at the end of the day. I couldn't improve my health without changing the way I was that brought that about. So for me, I was a vegetarian, for example. I was working ridiculous hours. I never relaxed, right? I had black mold exposure from an apartment that I was living in. I had a whole bunch of stuff, but I had to change, and it was literally the death of who I was then to who I am now. And I had to kind of rebuild myself, right? Who I was, what my future plans were, even how I perceived the things happening to me. So that's where healing reactions is very critical, but like Jill's wondering, we don't want to confuse them with a disease reaction, because it's very easy to say, oh, it's just a healing reaction when your health is getting worse, right? And we always need to listen to the body, because the body's always doing what's right, even if we may not think it's right. So things like the immune responses and all this stuff, that's the body's wisdom. And the goal of the program is to enable that to do its job the best it can, right, at the end of the day.
Yes, and I like to think of myself as more of a facilitator for the client, for them to regain their own intuitions, because I think that we've lost that so much. So that's one thing I try to do. I try to help foster that in my clients, them regaining their intuition about what's going on. And I think one thing as practitioners it's really important to do is like when we're looking at tests and we're looking at how the client's progressing is to not only say like what's happened on the HTMA, but what's expected to happen next in their healing. Like it's going to be normal for you to start feeling this way and to start feeling this way and kind of start, I think when you can start preparing people for what's kind of ahead, you know, I know that we don't have crystal balls or anything, but I think it's really important to know that, you know, what can happen, what's probably going to happen, what other people have experienced. So I don't know. That's
absolutely, and that it's not always a clear cut. You're going to improve your test every single time, because a lot of people get discouraged when that is not the case. Is there any more questions regarding infrared? Because we're coming about the time when we should start wrapping up. About 5 minutes left.
I just want to say thank you. I learned so much. There was so much great information on this call. I just want to thank everybody for their participation and sharing.
Thanks for coming, because it would just be me blabbering to everyone. It's important to have other people, because then I might as well not have a live call, right? I could just record myself talking. And just to touch on Amy, what she was saying with the importance of practitioners, talking about what people should expect, is that all too often, even though nutritional balancing is a wellness-based program and not disease-based program, I think there's a lot of fear-mongering, especially in the ideas of copper toxicity. I mean, I could just be putting myself out here, but I think when you think you're toxic, you create that reality, whether it be true or not. And I think I see client when I do hair testing, I look at copper toxicity indicators, but I don't always tell someone they're copper toxic. And I know, and I'm sure Amy does too, that over a sequence of tests that happen over a period of time, your indicators change, and that you may not be quote unquote copper toxic this test, but 1 year tests will probably in the future have a lot of indicators for copper toxicity. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're copper toxic, and that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're not copper toxic, you know? And I think long term is what we should be looking at on enhancing all of our detoxification abilities because of the time that we're in. And I think that's why infrared saunas are so important in this day. Especially because I don't think I've mentioned it in the past, but they protect from radiation, even though it is radiation. So that takes some thought and some science to know about. But so in times of Fukushima, which happened forever ago, but people still talk about, Chernobyl happened forever ago, it's still relevant. You know, nobody talks about it anymore because we have a new problem. We have all this EMF exposure, which the infrared lamps do help us recover from, and even to some degree protect us from it. So instead of always being in a toxic mentality or a mentality where I have this disease, you should look at things as I have this opportunity to improve myself. I have mineral imbalances that when I correct will allow me to let go of heavy metals rather than I have all these heavy minerals and mineral deficiencies and imbalances. So that's some thoughts that I have right there, just kind of end the call. So are we all good? Do you want to finish the call 2 minutes early, or do you want to chit chat?
I love what you just said. I think that's so important. Chris is one of my clients, and I tell her this a lot. I tell my clients this. You know, if you're doing the program or you're doing part of the program or you're just trying, every test you have, no matter if it looks worse, is an improvement. Because if you start to eliminate something or something, you know, an adrenal ratio goes, you know, haywire, or, you know, it's because your body had the energy to go back and heal that, or to release that. Or so every retest is, if you're doing something to try to improve your health, if you're putting the energy into doing that, every retest is an improvement.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, for my own thing, like I'll just say that I've seen calcium shells get worse, which you can say, oh man, I'm in slower oxidation. but sometimes that's considered as excretion of calcium, right? And sometimes you think, oh, I got this problem or that problem, and for the most part, usually when you're following a program, you're working on improving your health, you're focusing and addressing emotional problems, and you're not being ignorant to all these different factors that you're contributing to the person, right? Generally, they're always beneficial, even when you're going through symptoms that may be the worst ever. And I think that is kind of the future of, I think all practitioners need to do, because to me, I hear all too often you're toxic, right? Or you're doing this wrong because you're following someone else's program, or you're following this TEI and you should be doing ARL, or vice versa, right? And to me, none of that really matters. What matters is that you're working on your health, and if there's something that fits and that you believe to be accurate and what you like resonates with the core of you and how you see things, I think that's the way you should go.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to touch on that too. Yeah, I think it's one of the key things that's really important to keep in mind is, whenever we're healing or whatever, we usually have one issue that's like the main focus thing that we're trying to address. That's like the most debilitating thing, and oftentimes we always like identify with that. So personally, like I've had a lot of feelings of anxiety in my past, and still I'm not completely over it, but not as much as before. But a lot of people will take on that symptom and put it on, like their clothes and identify as themselves. So like, I have anxiety disorder, I have multiple sensitivity, I have celiac, or all these different things. Whereas, I mean, this is kind of like a Buddhist perspective of it, but everything is impermanent, where like things are going to come and things are going to go. And, whenever you're identifying yourself with one particular imbalance, that's really creating a psychological relationship with that, and defining yourself, which is just really not a healthy thing to be doing. As well as just realizing that healing is something that, like this program and all of this, it should be more based on lifestyle. Just with the realization that you're going to be doing this for the rest. I mean, if you enjoy it, it should be an enjoyable thing that you can do the rest of your life and becoming better and better, rather than just, I'm going to do this or until whatever that symptom is that they leave or whatnot.
I just want my energy back, and then I can go back and do all the things that got me to where I was.
Exactly. I can go back to drinking beers and smoking cigarettes and this and that.
Absolutely. So we are not our disease. We're spirit, and we're encased in 103 elements, right? We're not those minerals either. So we're spirit, soul, whatever you want to say. And we don't actually have any of those physical symptoms, because we're not really just physical. We're multidimensional. So I'd like to end the call here. I think we ended on a really good note. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'm looking forward to having many more calls. And thank you for interacting, all of you.
Thank you. It was great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.